भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ आप्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुश्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि। सर्वं ब्रह्म उपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्याम् मा ब्रह्म निराकरोद। निराकरणमस्त्वनिराकरणं मेस्तु। तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्मास्ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
We will begin with chanting of Kenopanishad.
केनेषितं पतति प्रेषितं मनः केन प्राणः प्रथमः प्रैतियुक्तः। केनेषितां वाचमिमां वदन्ति चक्षुश्रोत्रं कौ देवो युनक्ति। श्रोत्रस्य श्रोत्रं मनसो मनो यद्वाचोह वाचगो स प्राणस्य प्राणः। चक्षुषश्चक्षुरतिमुच्य धीरा प्रेत्यास्माल्लोकादमृता भवन्ति। न तत्र चक्षुर्गच्छति न वाग्गच्छति नो मनो न विद्मो न विजानीमो यथैतदनुशिष्यात्। अन्यदेव तद्विदितादथो अविदितादधि इति शुश्रुमपूर्वेषां येनस्तद्व्याचचक्षिरे। यद्वाचानभ्युदितं येन वागभ्युद्यते तदेव ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि नेदं यदिदमुपासते। यन्मनसा न मनुते येनाहुर्मनो मतम् तदेव ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि नेदं यदिदमुपासते। यच्चक्षुषा न पश्यति येन चक्षुगोषि पश्यति तदेव ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि नेदं यदिदमुपासते। यच्छ्रोत्रेण न शृणोति येन श्रोत्रमिदगो श्रुतम् तदेव ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि नेदं यदिदमुपासते। यत्प्राणेन न प्राणिति येन प्राणः प्रणीयते तदेव ब्रह्मत्वं विद्धि नेदं यदिदमुपासते।
That which is indeed the ear of the ear, mind of the mind, speech of the speech, prana of the prana, and eye of the eye. This is a classical answer given by the Guru to the question asked by the student in the first mantra. Then he says, Dhiraha, the wise people, the valorous people, the wise people, valor in terms of their knowledge, the wise people, having completely freed from the and risen above this world, they become immortal. Now this lesson of detachment and objectivity given here can be applied both relatively and at the absolute level. In the Upanishad book, you can see that there is a chart given which is very important. The left side of the chart gives the terms that are denoting the Supreme Self, the capital ear, and the right hand side of the chart gives all the changeable, perishable sense organs, ear, small ear. So, the idea given as a path indicated in the second line is that the seeker must shift his focus of attention from the changeable to the changeless within. So it is difficult to practice the introverted sadhana, but the lesson given here is, as and when we perceive the world, instead of allowing the mind to get involved in the perception, instead of thinking of what you hear, try to shift the focus from what you hear to what makes you hear. So that is how we are able to shift our focus. So therefore, when the perception comes from outside, it reaches you, it enters you, but the moment perception enters us, our mind pushes the senses and we get completely involved and lost in the world. But the wise people, in and through all these things, they are trying to shift the focus from what makes me hear. In fact, this is given elaborately in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 25, 26, etc., which is the portion of the 12 yajnas. There he says how you can convert your perception into worship, how you can slowly change every activity of ours into yajna. So, it is no doubt for the introverted people, but the formula holds that we have a chance to focus, only a human being has this chance to focus on what is being perceived or what makes you perceive. So, in and through all the perceptions, if you are going to shift the focus on what makes you perceive, you are detached, but you go through the motion of the perceptions. Since there is no further impressions created in the mind, you are not developing any further vasanas. Therefore, these people become slowly freed from all the entanglements. This is called as objectivity. Objectivity is, see, this mantra is saying, in fact, next two mantras are going to emphasize that only, that the real subject in you is the self. What is being experienced is the object. So, what is objectivity? Objectivity is to treat the object as it is. The moment subject gets involved in the object, that is when you lose the objectivity. Subject gets involved. So the whole idea is to segregate that everything else apart from me is the object and I am the subject. That supreme self within me is the true subject. So in order for us to do that, we need to shift the focus. So it's very easy to say, don't think of the world, think of God. But how do we actually do it? Sadhana at our level, Upasana is all given later. But this being the Upanishad, it is giving very directly that the wise shift from small ear to the capital ear. They shift from the small mind to the capital mind. They shift from the small prana to the capital prana. Everything that is consciousness within you, if you are able to focus on that consciousness within, you don't get involved in the world. So these wise people, having freed themselves from this world, are able to attain that immortality. Immortality is the ultimate state of changelessness, which is the state of self-realization. Mantra 3 we will chant twice.
न तत्र चक्षुर्गच्छति न वाग्गच्छति नो मनो न विद्मो न विजानीमो यथैतदनुशिष्यात् न तत्र चक्षुर्गच्छति न वाग्गच्छति नो मनो न विद्मो न विजानीमो यथैतदनुशिष्यात्.
The eye cannot reach that, nor speech, nor mind indeed. We know it not. We do not know how to impart it. A very classical mantra. That which is the Supreme Self, which was the question asked by the student, the master says very clear. He is going to reiterate the point that is given in the mantra 2 in different forms throughout the Upanishad. That is why Kena Upanishad is a very concentrated Upanishad on this theme only. Later he is going to give a story based on the same theme. The theme is not going to change. The main theme of the Upanishad is this only. the eyes do not go there, the speech does not reach it, the mind does not reach it, then he says, we don't know it. The master says, we don't know it. Then he says, we don't know how to impart it. Yatha anushishyat. How to impart it, we don't know. For ascertaining the existence of any object, two things are required. The object should exist, and you must have the source of knowledge to understand that the object exists. The object is existing, it can be understood only if the object has some description about it. Lakshana it is called. And that description is based on certain qualities of that object. See, suppose if you take mango. Mango is defined by certain color, certain shape, but essentially certain taste. All these are qualities of the mango. But how do you know the mango is there? That taste is tastable by your tongue. So what is the pramana of the knowledge? Pramana means what is the proof? What is the source? That is because my perception is there. Pratyaksha it is called. Pratyaksha means it's just not eye, it is all the senses. So that there is an object there, that object has some definable quality, that which can be determined by something. That determined by something is, I am able to know it by my experience of perception. You take the example of any touch, a touch of a child, or a touch of a rough person, a touch of this sun's heat on our skin. These are all having very distinct characteristics and qualities in themselves. But how do you know it? I have my skin. I have my skin to experience it. So, something can be known, can be understood by my perception. This is called pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means that which can be perceived and understood by your senses. There are certain things which cannot be described because they don't have a name or form, and yet we can say they exist. For example, fear. What is fear? Show me the fear. You cannot show the fear in terms of an object. You cannot show worry. You cannot show attachment or love. You cannot show cheer. And yet we understand fear. How do we understand fear? We understand fear. Suppose if a child is seeing something and it is getting afraid. From the expression of the face, we know that the child is afraid. But by that expression of the face, how do you know that it is fear? You see the expression of the face, you see something, but how do you know it is fear? Or it is laughing, you say that child is happy. How do you know it is happy? You know it is happy because you have experienced it. You have experienced fear. You have experienced laughter. You have experienced worry. You have experienced all the thoughts inside. So this is inference. See, inference is a source of knowledge where your experience and intellect is involved. You may not have direct perception, is not possible, but you are able to understand it indirectly. But experience is a very essential aspect of it. We give the example of inference even with reference to smoke and fire. You have not directly seen the fire, but from smoke you understand that there should be fire. That is also inference. But how do you know? Your intellect knows. Earlier you know. You have been taught or you have seen it before that when fire is there and it is coming out in a big way, smoke will rise. So having seen the smoke from a distance, you say there must be fire there. That is inference. This is anumana. Anumana is using your intellect. and using your experience to understand. Now, with reference to the object that he is trying to ascertain here, you can't even call it object. You can't call it anything. Why? He says very clearly, na tatra chakshur gachati. The eyes don't go there. That means your eyes or any other sense has no chance of seeing it. Because some of the atheists at a very lower level, they argue, God is there, show me. No. Very clearly Upanishad says, na tatra chakshur gachati. Eyes don't go there. The speech doesn't go. Somebody can talk to God and all, it's not possible. There are some who do that. Particularly if you see this God TV and all, which is more famous in the West, how they propaganda of Christianity happens. There is a huge, it's all very emotional. That is the main thing. In fact, some of the followers will be very sincere. That is why we say, more than Jesus Christ, it is the faith in the Jesus Christ that is going to save. Your faith is very important. So followers may be even sincere. So this person is having a meeting at 9 o'clock and he deliberately comes at 9:30 or so, and everybody is waiting. And in a very emotional tone he says, I am late, because I was having breakfast with God. Something like that he says. And the crowd goes rapturous. And you know what God said? What God said? They say, he's building up the thing. God says he loves you all. There is no conversation with God possible. Upanishad is very clear. Na vag gachati. And this person has already spoken with God. He has had breakfast with God. Everything is he saying. It's just not possible. Na vag gachati. So if it is not perceivable by your senses or you cannot contact it with your speech, what about your mind's picture or your anumana or inference or a picture about it in the mind or your thought or your comprehension? No, that is not possible. Na manaha. Even the mind does not go. Therefore he says, na vidmo. Therefore he says, we don't know it. We don't know it does not mean the master has anyway fallen down from his state of enlightenment. We don't know it means we don't know it in the sense of what you know the objects of the world. That how you know and perceive the world as nama rupa, as name and form, in any of that angle, we don't know it. He is very, very clear about it. And since na vag gachati, he immediately goes one step further and says, na vijanimo yataita dhanushishya. Nor we do know how to explain it. It is not explainable. Only if the speech goes there can somebody speak of it. How is it possible to speak of it? It is not possible to speak of it. So he says we really cannot explain. Literally speaking, there is no communication from the persons in the enlightened stage to the masses like us who are in the waking state of consciousness. Just as a waker can have no communication with the person in the dream state. You are woken up from the dream, the other person is still dreaming. He is in a different world altogether. How can you communicate with him when he is dreaming? It is just not possible. It's a different plane of consciousness altogether. The senses cannot perceive it. The mind cannot reach it. Mind cannot comprehend it. Intellect cannot comprehend it. If something cannot be understood and proven by these known sources of our faculties, why do you want to keep on saying that, but still it is there, it is there, it is there? Why do you want to, it is like a, and do you think that you are Brahman, it seems like a hypnotism, no? Why do you want to do it? Just because a poor man is saying, I am rich, he is not going to become, he is not rich, he is poor only. But Upanishad says, it's very clear that the eyes don't reach there. It's very clear that the speech don't reach there. It is very clear the mind does not reach there. But I'll prove it. It says I'll prove it. So show me God as an object. It is not possible for me to show you. That is very clear. but I can prove it to you. How is it possible? He says, see there. See there means, yes, I am seeing. Where is God? See there means you are seeing, no? So what makes you see? That you are seeing is the proof that something is making you see. That which is the subject within you, which is making you see, is God. Therefore, your sight is a proof that God is there. Your sound of hearing of a sound is a proof that the God is there. See, a person is able to view everything afar through the telescope, except
Can't see the telescope. The telescope can't see. His own eye.
his own eye. His own eye he cannot see. The eye is the subject, telescope is the instrument. With the eye, through the telescope, he is seeing the moon, he is seeing whatever he is seeing. But he wants to see his own eye. He cannot plug the eye and put it in front of telescope. With what he will see? So in this example, it's a limited example. In this example, the eye is the real subject which is seeing. Everything else is the object. And the telescope is the instrument by which you are seeing. The telescope can help you see everything except the eye. If the moment the eye becomes an object of sight, it stops to be a subject in this example. Similarly, if anybody says, God I have seen, God is there and it can be seen or it can be experienced or something, it is like one more object in the world, which is not the case. Which is not the case. The real subject in you is the God. That is what is emphasized in this mantra 3. It's a very, again, as I said, these mantras and all, obviously it is meant for our contemplation. And you just think about this. The main theme that is given in this mantra is that the subject within us, the real subject within us is the Brahman or the God. It cannot be an object of comprehension. It cannot be an object of emotion. It cannot be an object of perception. So therefore he says, Na tatra chakshur gachati. The sight doesn't go there. The ears or the speech doesn't go there. The mind doesn't go there. Na vidmo. We don't know it. We don't know it means we don't know it as an object as you are experiencing now. As the student is experiencing now, we don't know, we cannot know it as an object. Then he goes one step and says, Na vijanimo yathaida anushishyat. Nor we do know how to explain it. It cannot be imparted. It cannot be imparted. All that we are talking about is knowledge about it. That is why in the next mantra he is going to very beautifully conclude, Iti Shushruma. Thus have we heard from the masters. How have we heard? We have heard like this. We have heard like this that it cannot be heard. We have heard like this that it cannot be experienced. These are just indicators. So that cannot be captured. That cannot be caught in your imagination. That cannot be caught in your perception. It is the real subject in you which is experiencing. Thy cannot reach that, nor speech, nor mind. Indeed, we know it not. We do not know how to impart it. The Guru actually prepares the students for the import that he is going to give in Mantra 4, which is the quintessence of the entire Upanishad. Mantra 4, first line is something that you must by heart and never forget in life. That is probably the closest that we can reach to the explanation of God. This is the beauty of this mantra. Yes, sir.
So many times at different places in scripture they do talk about Brahman in different forms for inclusion, adjectives and other things. So on one side the scripture says that it cannot be talked about, on the other side they are describing those things.
Why even in the same Upanishad it comes later? So that is why, you are not in the beginning. The Kena Upanishad in the part 1 is talking about the highest philosophy of part 1 and 2 talks about the Nirguna Brahman. Part 3 and 4 talks about the Saguna Brahman. The Upanishads usually are contained in 4 parts. The first part is catering to the highest quality of the students who are well prepared and they have to just elevate themselves to the state of Brahman. So the first part is declaration of the truth. The second part is the explanation of the truth. That's for the second level of the student. They need further explanation. And little bit of sadhana is given. Third part is as a path to truth. Karma, bhakti, various things are explained as to how to reach there. Fourth part is given as clear cut instruction, do this, don't do this, etc., because that is the grade. This is not to degrade, because any student who is qualified to go that level itself is very high, but he needs certain instructions. Therefore we must be very careful as to the context. In this same Upanishad, part 1, what we chant now, Nedam Yadidam Upasate, 5 times he repeats. Upanishads are known for their brevity. There's no repetition, but here it is said for the emphasis of this knowledge. Mark those 5 verses, 5 mantras. Later in the part 4, he is going to say Upasitavyam, Tad Vanamiti Upas. You have to worship it like this. Nedam Edidam Upasate. What you worship here, not what you worship here, is going to say. But later he is going to say, you have to worship like this. It seems a contradiction within the same Upanishad. It is very clear as to he is catering to the different level of adhikari here. That's Mantra 4 we will chant twice.
अन्यदेव तद्विदितादथो अविदितादधि इति शुश्रुमपूर्वेषां येनस्तद्व्याचचक्षिरे अन्यदेव तद्विदितादथो अविदितादधि इति शुश्रुमपूर्वेषां येनस्तद्व्याचचक्षिरे.
That indeed is other than the known, also beyond the unknown. Thus have we heard from the ancients who expounded that to us. I mean, as you know, this cannot be really read and understood or explained. This has to be experienced. This is the mantra. Swamiji says, once this mantra is uttered, your hair should stand on end and you must walk out of the class. I mean, don't do it little. It is, that sort of elevation that it should take us to. That is the closest that anybody can say. Anyat eva tat vidita dado avidita dadi. There are 2 words that he introduces here, viditam and aviditam. And he says anyat. Anyat means other. Other than, adi means beyond. That which you are seeking is other than what is known. So we immediately come to the conclusion that it is unknown. No, he says, it is beyond the unknown. That which you are that which is to be understood is other than the known, and that is beyond the unknown. It is beyond the known, it is beyond the unknown. And then actually second line is even more inspiring. It says, thus have we heard from our masters who have expounded that to us. This is how our masters have given this knowledge to us. You have to see utter humility of the Rishi of the Upanishad. In fact, he has taken us to a great height through this one mantra that he said in the first line. Probably nobody else or nowhere else has gone, the thought gone so far. And then immediately he says, this is what our ancient seers has taught us. There is absolutely no arrogation to oneself. In fact, that is the fact that it is not through their thinking and their intellect that it comes. It is coming through their experience. So therefore, when they are in the state beyond their body, mind, intellect is what it is coming, and it is true that they are just following the parampara which has given this. There are 4 sources of knowledge as we are discussing before. Pratyaksha pramana is that which you know by your senses. If you don't know Taj Mahal, you see it and you know it, that is pratyaksha. Knowledge is obtainable by direct perception. Anumana is by inference, which uses your experience and intellect to know, which cannot be known or seen directly. You can still know it, you can still understand it if you are able to use your intellect, if you are able to use your experience. Then you have Upaman. Upamana is comparison. One of the ways of understanding is if you are able to explain that as a parallel of something else. That also you must have an idea, but this is a method that is commonly adopted in scriptures, also in Bhagavad Gita also you will find. Suppose if you want to know about Shivaji Maharaj, one is to make you understand about the story and other thing, but then you say he is like a tiger. That gives a picture of what he is. or you say this is like this, she is as beautiful as the moon, like that. So it all this is giving an idea of what it is in comparison. So comparison is also a way of understanding or knowing. But another method which has lot of weightage in this country, particularly with reference to scriptural knowledge, is called as Shabda or Agama. Agama means tradition. Shabda means Vedas. Shabda Praman or Agama as tradition is, how do you know this? The master has taught. How does he know his master has taught? How does he know his master has taught? Where did it all start? We do not know. Unbroken chain of lineage of Guru Shishya Parampara has sustained this knowledge over thousands and thousands of years. So the weightage that is given to it, which has sustained over a period of time, is immense. One of the tests as to, see, we always say go by inquiry, go by thinking process, all that is fine. But ultimately one test whether something is worth inquiring and understanding is, the test is that whether it stands to the test of time. Time is something which will sort of destroy everything. If something has stood the test of time, that means it is something which cannot be destroyed by time. That which cannot be destroyed by time is beyond time. That is the self actually. Even the things which are worldly and you do great things, it has a longer period of existence, but it has a shelf life. After that it has to expire. But this we see. You can give a time frame for Bhagavad Gita also, it is 5,000 years, and Bhagavad Gita is derived from Upanishad. Some people give a time for Upanishad. But for all practical purposes, it is there from when we really do not know. Even the Western researchers and other people, they view it from a scientific point of view and try to ascertain time. But really you cannot ascertain time. Where did he get means you really do not know. That is the power of tradition. Therefore, it does not mean that we should not question, we should not inquire, we should. But there is a great sense of weightage and devotion that is associated with it. So, if we go to Gita, which is a very great text given by Krishna or Vedavyasa, you can say, there Krishna says, this we have heard from our masters, this is from the Upanishad he is saying. You go to the Upanishad, which is the ultimate source. There the masters are saying, this we have heard from our masters. So this shows the utter humility. See, knowledge and humility are two sides of the same coin. The moment you are filled with knowledge, the moment you are absorbed with knowledge, automatically the head bows down in humility. And that is not they are trying to be humble. It is just a natural process that it is there. Iti Shushruma Purvesham Yenastad Vyajachakshire. Also mark this mantra. A very, very similar, exactly, almost verbatim, similar mantra comes in next Upanishad that we will see, which is Ishavasya Upanishad. But the meaning and interpretation are completely different there. It's very, very interesting. But verbatim, almost verbatim same. But the meaning and interpretation are completely different there. Now coming back to the main theme here. Anyat eva tat vidita dado avidita dadi. So there are two things that are given here. One is called Viditam, another is called Aviditam. There are three interpretations given by Swamiji. You can read it in detail in the book. The first is the highest level of interpretation, the highest level of philosophical thought, which takes you almost to the door of Brahman itself. The second is a scholarly interpretation from microcosmic point of view, which also requires a little bit of deep understanding, but it is one step below the first interpretation. The third interpretation is quite easy. It is from a very practical point of view. In fact, the course before us in the academy, we were told by the students there when we saw their notes, there was a fourth interpretation given also, which is for the masses, he says. That we will take up first. Anyat evatat vidita dado avidita dadi. That which is beyond the known and that is which is beyond the unknown. Suppose if you want to tell a child who is God, Huh? What are gods? You will say, there are many people like gods who have even walked amongst us in this country also. We know Lord Rama was God, Lord Krishna was God. Like that, various gods are there. Lord Muruga was there. There are various gods, you can say, they have appeared. They have shown themselves to devotees. There are various, not only these gods as incarnations, even the great rishis, they are also Bhagavan. Durvasa Bhagavan, we say, Vishwamitra, they are all gods. And these are all known to us. Known to us means known to us through Puranas, through stories, through our parampara, we know that. But there are various other self-realized masters who might not have even come out of the caves of their meditation in Himalayas. We really do not know. How many such people are there? We really do not know. When I say not now, through the ages, it is not known. Many people are just not known. What we know is through what we read in Puranas and Itihasas, etc. And maybe some people have met Ramana Maharshi and like that it can be known. But there are countless other people who do not know. So what is known is this set of people I should not say, whatever it is. The unknown is another set of people whom nobody knows, but the Supreme Brahman is beyond all these things. It's a very, but what you say is that Supreme Brahman is that same principle which is beyond this and beyond this that is there. So this is a way to explain that it is beyond the known and which is beyond the unknown. From the practical point of view, all the things that we is Prakriti, that which is matter, can be covered in two things. The two things are what I know and what I don't know. Think about it. Anything in the world with reference to a fact or a data or anything can be covered under these two things. What I know and what I don't know. There was a joke that I saw in this social media. If you read two books, you can cover everything that has to be known. The two books, he has shown the picture also, the titles of the books there. First book is what they teach you in Harvard. Second book is what they don't teach you in Harvard. Two different people have written those two books in two different points of time. So if you read those two books, actually, you have known everything. What they teach in Harvard is one thing. What they don't teach in Harvard is another thing. You have known everything. It's just I was just reminded of the jokes. Just similarly, think about this Prakriti. Anything in this world is something which can be captured under what you know and what you don't know. Usually in the lectures also Swamiji gives this example that, do you know my name? Yes, I know. Do you know my father's name? I do not know. Do you know cycling? Yes, I know. Do you know swimming? I do not know. Do you know what apple is? Yes, I know. Do you know what durian is? I don't know. It's another fruit. I'm just taking an example of a fruit. Like that, anything in this world, you think of anything. You know what vasanas are? No, I don't know. You know what your thought is? Yes, I know. So, all the things in the matter up to the highest level of vasanas can be captured under these two categories, that what I know and what I don't know. But that consciousness which enlivens what I know is the same consciousness which enlivens what I don't know. That which is beyond my knowledge and my ignorance is the same pure consciousness. In other words, if you ask this question, do you know my name? And you say, I know your name. The next question is, how do you know my name? How do you know my name?
I know that I know.
You cannot say, yeah, you told me. That I'll say, how do you know that I told you? How do you know I told you the truth? No, I know. So finally you have to say, I know. I know, don't bug me. I know that I know your name. I know that And if I ask you, you don't know my father's name, I don't know. But how do you know that you don't know? How do you know that you don't know? That also I know. So there is a conscious principle in you which is backing all the areas of your knowledge and all the areas of your ignorance. That consciousness which is supportive of your knowledge and ignorance is beyond your knowledge and ignorance. So that which you know is your knowledge, that which is unknown is your area of ignorance, that which is the consciousness is beyond your knowledge and ignorance is the pure consciousness. This is quite practical in understanding what the self is. More subtler than this is what is known. What is known is this perceptible world for us, which is based on my experience of body, mind and intellect. Therefore, what I know is body and its perceptions. What I know is my mind and its emotions. What I know is my intellect and its thoughts and ideologies and ideas. All these things come under the realm of what I know. It is known. It is viditam. But where does this all come from within me? It is said to be unknown. We do not know. That there is somewhere, we do not know, all this, where, time, all these things breaks there. All that we can relate to it is in terms of our experience of deep sleep. All the things that you know, you are auditor now, you are checking accounts, March 31 finalization is having day in and day out you are working, and you have stopped the work today at this point of time. Tomorrow, you will continue from where you have left today and you continue your work. You sleep in between, in the night. You go to sleep as a auditor. You get up and continue your work as an auditor. In between these two, who were you? Where were you? Unknown. It is unknown. We do not know. That state of deep sleep, where all the thoughts, all the perceptions are said to be in the unmanifest state, is beyond our comprehension. So, when we did Tattva Bodha in Atma Bodha also, it says, Anadi avidya anirvachya karanopadi ruchyate. Anadi avidya. Avidya means ignorance. That which is the seed personality of us, which is the cause of the gross body and the subtle body to blossom outside, is actually unknown. What is known to us is in the realm of the thoughts, which is in the body, mind and intellect. But the pure consciousness is actually beyond your gross body, subtle body and causal body. So that which is beyond your known gross and subtle body, that which is other than your causal body, that is supreme consciousness. That cannot be known. Mathematically speaking, what is known is all the natural numbers. You can know what is 1, what is 2, what is 3, you know. If you want to even explain to a child, you can explain to the child in terms of this is one chocolate, this is two chocolates you can give. Like that you can know and you can explain. It's understandable. But what is 0? 0, how do you explain? How do you know? You cannot comprehend it. You can only say 7 minus 7 or something like that. But what it is, you do not. See, in terms of an object, you can say 1 chocolate or 2 chocolates. But you cannot say 0 chocolates. Even whether to use singular or plural, we do not know. Because when 0 chocolate is not there, why do you bring in chocolate there? Or why do you bring in, it can be 0 elephant also. Anything for, but you cannot say 0 without bringing in some other factor there. That 0 itself is incomprehensible. It is something that is understood with relation to something minus something or something like that. You know, that's how it is. So, that which is the base of all these numbers, from where all the numbers have sprung out, is actually unknown. 0 is unknown. That is why deep sleep state is equated to 0. It is nothing. Nothingness cannot be understood. Nothingness cannot be explained. Nothingness can only be sort of experienced. In your deep sleep, it can be experienced. So, how do you define nothing? You can maximum say nothingness is absence of something, absence of anything. You can say like that. So absence of something. So something means moment the thought is there, something is there. So absence of thought itself goes into the state of deep sleep. So that which is zero is unknown. That which is numbers is known. But what is infinite? Infinite is something beyond numbers, beyond zero. So infinite is equated to the consciousness here. So that which is beyond known and that which is beyond unknown is the supreme consciousness, which is enlivening your body, mind and intellect, which is making in fact even the vasanas come into the state of causal body, come into the state of subtle and gross bodies, which Swami Ramtirtha says is like the sun above. The glaciers is the causal body. The river in the Himalayas is the subtle body. The river which is flowing in the plains is the gross body. The glaciers are the potential for the river. The entire river is contained in the glaciers, but you don't know the river there. And the sun does not reflect in the river there. Sun is disjoint as it were from the glaciers there. But the moment it forms a rivulet in the mountains and it is flowing here and there like a calf of a cow jumping here and there very beautifully in a pure form, it is running. You see the reflection of the sun. This is the dream state. So dream state also you know because you are aware of the dream. You are able to recall the dream. You are very clear of it. But when the river becomes steady and it is touching the earth as it were and it is useful, it puts on a coat where it has colors. That is when Ganga comes from Haridwar, let us say. That is the gross body. So there also sun is reflected. But in the glaciers, sun is not reflected. The disjoint state of glaciers and the sun is the deep sleep state where consciousness and matter are completely segregated. That phase of river is unknown, but it is hidden in that glacier. So how does that glacier even come into the state of river? It is by the heat of the sun. So it is the sun that makes everything possible. That glacier itself is unknown. What is beyond it cannot be really comprehended. So that which is beyond the unknown, that which is obviously above the known is, so the known here is the body, mind, intellect, the gross body, subtle body, the waker, dreamer, all this is in the realm of the known. What is unknown is the causal body, it's the deep sleep state, it is the vasanas, it is zero, it is nothingness, that is the unknown. The pure consciousness is actually beyond the known and beyond the unknown. This is definitely a subtle interpretation with reference to Viditam and Aviditam. But Upanishad is not content with this. What is known? The grandest thing that if we are able to conceive the first interpretation, actually we have lost it. It should not be understood. It should be just wondered and aghast. What is really known? All that is known in this magnificent universe, science helps unearth new galaxies. The vastness of the universe itself is incomprehensible. Here there is no microcosm, macrocosm, everything. It's the vastness, it's the greatness. It is a one great entity called the universe. Even if you are able to go further and accommodate the lokas that are mentioned in our Puranas, like the imperceptible universe, Swargaloka, above that there is Janaloka, Maharloka, Tapoloka is there, Satyaloka is there, Brahma is there. Now, even the perceptible visible universe with all our telescopes and all the new technologies, it is something which cannot be comprehended. It is something which cannot be visualized or thought of. Even if you see a science documentary, beyond a point it becomes blurred. We are not talking about that extremity and vastness. When you go inside an atom also, it is the same thing. Beyond a point, electron, neutron, you break it, you go into quartz, whatever they say about it, the scientists, we do not know, but beyond a point. And these are actually, with your perception, with your intellect, with your thinking, you are able to understand all these things. So all these things which are staggering as far as this great thing that we experience as universe is concerned, all put together is in the known realm. Even Swargaloka, all these lokas, how do you know? We know through the Shastras, but we know it. We know it. There it is explained that if you are able to have an ice cream and derive X amount of pleasure here, it is 10 times that pleasure there, etc. These are all ways by which you are able to comprehend it. So therefore, all the things that are perceptible in this universe, not perceptible but comprehensible through your imagination or whatever it is with reference to other universe, and that is considered billion times bigger than this, million times bigger than this. There are so many other galaxies, so many other planets and life. It is beyond a point, it becomes blurred for us. Just as few years back we were dealing with, even now, about the scams and corruptions in the country. They said about 1,76,000 crores. Whether it is 1,76 crores or 1,76,000 crores, will it make any difference? As far as our understanding is, how many few more zeros if you add, how does it make any difference? We can relate up to a point of, let's say, or some person who can relate up to a point of 10 lakh and 1 crore, it is fine. But 1 lakh crore or 10 lakh crore or 100 lakh crores, it really makes no difference. You can add few more zeros, it makes no difference about it. But for some person, even this 10 lakh and 1 crore will not make any difference to him. Suppose his monthly salary is 1,000, let us assume. He is working as a very small peon or somewhere, where very poor, and maximum he is earning is that much only, and he is somehow struggling and existing. And you say that I will give you 1 lakh, means he won't understand what it is. He say, please give 2,000, he will say. That's all he will say, because its level of understanding is that much. Beyond a point, it becomes blurred. A person who is a Darwan of a big building where, let us assume Tatas and Birlas are there in the top floor, and somebody who is another great industrialist in the middle floor, and some L&T managers in the first floor, and we are there in the first floor. For the Darwan, it may not make any difference, because everybody comes in and goes out in a car and he salutes everybody. That's all it is. But where is that industrialist, and where is, even for a person in the first floor, this industrialist and Tata Birla could be the same, because they are all same as far as his perception is concerned. But only a person who is at that level can understand. So where is Tata, where is Birla, where is Ambani? Who will know? Amongst them, they will know. It is at that level that they will know even their material worth, that will make a difference to them. So beyond a point, everything becomes blurred. So in terms of the vastness of the universe, we do not at any point of time think anything beyond ourselves or our family. The thought really doesn't go there. But if at all we take a serious inquiry and to find out what is this grand universe all about, what is all this known realm, you use all the internet and documentaries and books and masters and everybody at your disposal to understand what it is, it really gives a very, very staggering picture. All these things comes under the realm of the known. Then what is unknown? Unknown is the changeless substratum which forms the basis for this known universe. The known universe that we are experiencing, that we are seeing, is perishable in nature. It is perishable in nature. Perishable means it is bound by the rise up of time, space and causation. It has a beginning and an end. The name and form continues to change, but at every point of time, the name and form is on a continuous changing pattern. That which is perishable is the known. See, when a person goes to buy a garment, he wants a shirt, or he understands he wants a pant, kerchief, towel, various things that he buys. The shirt is made up of cotton in a particular shape, in particular form. The pant is made in a particular shape and particular form, that is also cotton. The kerchief is like that, in a particular shape and form. It's called kerchief. It has a name, it has a form. But that shirt is perishable. That dhoti is perishable. When it becomes old, you cut. But can anybody say that the cotton is perishable? Cotton is not perishable. In this example, I am saying. In this example, that shirt is perishable, the pant is perishable, but cotton continues to pervade and continues to be there. But what is cotton, if you ask? You will point out to the shirt only. So the person who is understanding the cotton, he understands cotton to be in a particular shape and particular form. But then you correct him and say, no, sorry, this is not cotton. This is shirt, but the shirt is made up of cotton. So what is cotton? Again you point out to that only. So the perishable aspect of this universe is known to us in its name and form is Viditam. But beyond the Viditam, there is an imperishable aspect of the universe which acts as the substratum, which acts as the base, which is imperishable, which cannot be touched, which cannot be understood. In and through all the garments, how cotton is imperishable. In and through all the ornaments, how gold is imperishable. In and through all the waves, bubbles, how ocean is imperishable. What is ocean? If you ask a child and you show this is what it is, then it sees something coming up and down. Oh, that is ocean. No, that is a small thing on the surface of the ocean. Ocean is something very vast and deep. It cannot be understood. What we see as an ocean is a very, very small portion which comes and goes, which is moving in the form of the waves. So there is something in this universe which is unchangeable, which is immutable, which forms the substratum, which forms the base, that which cannot be understood. That which cannot be understood is called as Aviditam or imperishable. So there is a perishable aspect of the universe. In 15th chapter, the parallel is Kshara, Akshara and Uttama Purusha. Kshara is the perishable aspect of the universe. Akshara means opposite. Akshara means imperishable. There is an imperishable aspect of the universe which forms the base, which forms the substratum. The classical example given in the Vedanta treatise, example of Swami Ramtirtha is totally different qualities are this diamond and charcoal. Diamond is very hard, charcoal is very soft. It can leave a mark on your finger if you hold it. Such a soft thing, you can write with it. Diamond is very hard that it can cut through metals. Diamond is very brilliant, charcoal is very dark. Diamond is very precious, charcoal is very cheap. Extremely opposite is these two. But science says both of these are carbon. It's chamatkar, it is miracle. That's the truth. We may not be able to understand it, but that's chemistry. So what is actually diamond in that shape and that form? What we see is actually changing and perishing. The atoms which are in a particular format in it, which may change shape and this thing outside, but the tendency or the main content of it, which is carbon, that doesn't change. That is the imperishable aspect of the diamond. It is the imperishable aspect of the charcoal. So like that, if you are able to understand each and every aspect of the universe, that what we see is a name and form, but there is a substance which undergoes this name and form without changing itself. That which becomes the basis of this, that is called as the imperishable aspect of it. But what Upanishad says is, it is not the imperishable also. That is where the staggering. So what do we say? This world is finite. God is infinite. God is supreme. God is infinite. But what Vedanta says, what Upanishad says is, that which you are seeking is beyond the finite and beyond the infinite. think about it. We'll continue in the next class because this is a deep thought that you need to take and analyze. Go through that mantra 4 commentary. I leave you with the thought for you to think about. This concept of infinite, which is there in mathematics, or a concept that is intellectually understood, is also applicable only when there is something finite is there. So in that sense, finite and infinite are also intellectual concepts, and God cannot be captured in any intellectual concept. So to summarize it, we'll have to continue it in the next class. What is known is perishable, what is unknown is imperishable, what is unknowable is beyond perishable and imperishable. Because iti shushruma purvesham. Oh, thank you, sir. I have understood it. How you have understood it? I have understood it to be something which cannot be understood. No, you have still not understood. That which is beyond your understanding, beyond. So forget the idea of capturing within your intellect. That has to be taken out of system. That is why in the second part he is going to say, those who have said they know it, they don't know it. Those who don't know it, they know it. He is going to say that. So it's a very grand concept. I mean, this cannot be really explained. This cannot be really understood. It has to be only felt. It has to be only, when I say felt, it is what I mean is it has to be experienced. It has to be, so that is the grandest statement that he is saying. So go through these 4 interpretations and make your own notes, make your own points about it. And the famous example or diagram that we always show with reference to pure consciousness and conditioned consciousness, that we will take it up in the next class. We'll conclude with the bhajans here.
Ananda Govinda Radhe Gopala Jayananda Mukunda Ananda Govinda Radhe Gopala Govinda Madhava Gopala Keshava Govinda Madhava Gopala Keshava Giridhari Giridhari Jaya Radhe Gopala Giridhari Giridhari Jaya Radhe Gopala Ghanshyam Shyam Shyam Jaya Jaya Radhe Gopala Ghanshyam Shyam Shyam Jaya Jaya Radhe Gopala Jayananda Mukunda Ananda Govinda Radhe Gopala Jayananda Mukunda Ananda Govinda Radhe Gopala Govinda Madhava Gopala Keshava Govinda Madhava Gopala Keshava Gopala Keshava Gopala Keshava Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti